2. Sepoy Mutiny and Revolt of 1857. Urban revolts. The Calcutta Bhadrolok raised the issue of santhals. There were grain riots in 1823-38 against the monopoly of grain dealers and British officials, helping them in western India and Delhi. There were rice riots in 1806-1858 in Vellore and South India. There was also a revolt in Vellore against the threats to convert to Christianity. There were revolts by artisans groups at Calcutta in 1789, Calcutta, and at Surat in 1790-1800. During the phase of 1809-1818, Rohilkhand and Bengal also witnessed such revolts. Sepoys Mutiny. The East India Company needed a large army to pursue territorial increase in India. Its demand for recruits increases its plan for expansion outside the boundaries of India and for imperial purposes to check. However, the sepoys found that the pay allowances and terms of services as they conquered more and more territories for the master decreased. They shared all the discontent and grievances social, religious and economic that affected the civilians. 3. History of Sepoy Mutiny. 1764. A sepoy mutiny broke out in Bengal. The British suppressed it, blowing away 30 sepoys from cannon. 1806. The sepoy at Vellore mutinied, but they were crushed. 1824. The 47th Regiment at Barakpur refused to go to Burma by sea route. 1844. 7 battalions revolted on the question of salaries and batter. Th. The 29th of March 1857. Mangal Pandey was hanged for firing on senior officers at Barakpur in Bengal. Th. The 10th of May 1857. The sepoys of the 3rd Native Cavalry stationed at Meerut revolted on the issue of the greased cartridges, and hence the revolt of 1857 started. Vellore Mutiny 1806. In 1805, General Sir John Cradock, who was the commander-in-chief of the Madras Army, ordered a change in the army's uniform that hurt the sentiments of both Hindu as well as Muslim soldiers. Hindus were prohibited from putting religious marks on their forehead. Muslims were forced to trim their moustaches and beards. Instead of the turban they were used to wearing, they were asked to wear a round hat usually associated with Europeans. This naturally angered the soldiers. Those who protested were punished with whipping and sent out of the army. Another trigger point was the defeat of Tipu Sultan in 1799, and after his death, his wives, children and servants were confined to the city of Vellore. People were angry about the disrespect shown by the British to the erstwhile ruler's sons. An attack was planned. Surprise strike. Vellore fort that housed battalions of the British and Madras infantry. That day was the wedding of one of Tipu Sultan's daughters. Soon after midnight, around 500 Indian soldiers broke into the fort and murdered more than 100 unsuspecting soldiers who were sleeping. The outnumbered British were taken by surprise and they fled. In a fiercely symbolic gesture, the rebels took down the Union Jack, the flag of the UK, and replaced it with the flag of Tipu Sultan. They then declared Tipu Sultan's second son as the king. A lack of clear leadership, however, caused the rebellion to lose focus beyond this point. Meanwhile, the British started fighting back. Led by Sir Rollo Gillespie, a team of soldiers approached the fort. 4. They blew open its doors and shot dead 100 Indian soldiers who were still inside. A total of around 350 Indian sepoys were killed in the counterattack. Tipu Sultan's family was eventually shifted to Calcutta. The revolt was suppressed within a day. The Revolt of 1857. Pattern of the rebellion. Rumors and prophecies. Rumors and prophecies played an important part in moving people into action during the Revolt of 1857. A rumor spread swiftly that the new cartridges introduced by Britishers were greased with the fat of cows and pigs, which would pollute their castes and religion. The rumors about the British mixing the bone dust of cows and pigs into the flour led people to avoid touching the flour. Fear and suspicion about the British wanting to convert Indians to Christianity. The rumor about the British rule coming to an end on the centenary of the Battle of Plassey also reinforced the call for a revolt. Indians believed the British policies to reform. Indians targeted their long-cherished customs and practices. The activities of Christian missionaries also created doubt and discomfort. The annexations on the pretext of the doctrine of lapse also made the people suspicious of British intentions. Circulation of chapatis started. The Chapati movement. Causes of the Indian Mutiny. The Indian Mutiny of 1857 was not a chance event but came to happen as one of the series of events that aimed at ousting the English from the Indian mainland. Political causes. The indiscriminate imperialistic policy of Lord Dalhousie played a dominating role in accelerating the forces of revolt. his policy of naked imperialism resulting in a crash program of annexations gave rise to deep indignation among the Indian masses. Though the discontent against British rule had been accumulating for the last 5 years, yet it was under Lord Dalhousie that it reached its climax. The annexations of Punjab, Satara, Nagpur and Jhansi alienated the goodwill of the Hindus, while the absorption of Oudh and other Muslim states estranged the sympathies of the Muslims. 5. The annexation of the state of Oudh, which had been a loyal ally of the English for the last 90 years, estranged the sympathies of her people. The charge of maladministration leveled against the Nawab of Oudh gave rise to a general political discontent among the inhabitants of the state, who now began to conspire the overthrow of the English yoke. The English had become a paramount power, but the shadow of the Mughal emperor was there to serve as a thread of unity for the Indian powers. The English, who had in fact abrogated themselves to a paramount position, could not realize this truth and ceased to observe all respect and formalities towards the emperor, which they had been doing till 1835. The Muslims were irritated by the thought that their supremacy over India was replaced by that of the British. Economic causes. Economic causes, too, played a remarkable role in bringing about the revolt of 1857. The rich resources of India began to be exploited right and left, which resulted in the destruction of Indian industry. Consequently, poverty loomed large in India and a bulk of her population came to depend on agriculture. John Sullivan, the trade languishes, the capital decays, the people are impoverished, the Englishman flourishes and acts like a sponge, drawing up riches from the banks of the Ganges and squeezing them down upon the banks of the Thames. Donation of rent-free lands to individuals and religious places had been a tradition in India since ancient times. The grants having been very old, the people now did not possess any documents to this effect. Lord William Bentinck asked the people, who enjoyed rent-free lands, to produce the necessary documents. But they could not be produced as they had been destroyed due to the passage of time. So, all such lands were subjected to land revenue, which created an issue with these people because they were economically hard hit. Many had to lose their lands as they could not pay the revenue in time. Thus, this economic measure of Bentinck victimized a large number of Indians who were reduced to poverty and who, when the time became favorable, joined the forces of revolt. The British government, after the annexation of a state, made land settlements in it and tried every measure to deprive the aristocracy of their lands and estates. 6. A severe scrutiny of the claims of landed aristocracy was carried on, as a result whereof the once rich Zamindars and Talukdars were reduced to poverty. These people had great influence among the masses who shared the discontent and resentment. The Imam Commission, 1852, at Bombay had led to the confiscation of about 20,000 estates in only 5 years preceding the mutiny. Thus, these deposed aristocrats became the leaders of the revolt and tried every nerve to overthrow British rule. After every annexation, the ruler was deposed and the ministers were dismissed. The armies of the state were disbanded and a few Englishmen came to fill up all these jobs. Thus, the field of employment was very much narrowed down for the Indians. The disbanded soldiers were deprived of their very living and began to starve. 60,000 soldiers were disbanded when Oudh was annexed in 1856. This disbanded soldier was sure to create anarchy and join the forces of mutiny. Awadh in revolt. A cherry that will drop into our mouth one day. Dalhousie described the kingdom of Awadh as a cherry that will drop into our mouth one day. The kingdom of Awadh was annexed in 1856 by Governor-General Lord Dalhousie. The subsidiary alliance was imposed on Awadh in 1801. According to the alliance, the Nawab was required to disband his military force and allow the British to position their troops within the kingdom and act in accordance with the advice of the British resident now attached to the court. Thus, the Nawab became dependent on the British. The British were keen to acquire Awadh as its soil was good for growing indigo and cotton and was ideally located for trade. By early 1850s, major areas of Maratha land, Doab, Punjab, Carnatic and Bengal were captured. Annexation of Awadh would complete the territorial annexation by the British. It was annexed on the grounds of maladministration. The life was gone out of the body. Annexation of Awadh resulted in dissatisfaction and disappointment among Indian hearts. Nawab Wajid Ali Shah was dethroned and exiled to Calcutta. The British wrongly assumed that the Nawab Wajid Ali Shah was an unpopular ruler. On the contrary, he was widely loved. Angrez Bahadur and Mulk Lai Linyo song became popular in memory of Nawab i.e. Jan-i-Alam. Dissolution of court and culture of Nawab, which made many artists losing their livelihood. Farangi Raj and the end of a world. In Awadh, the revolt became an expression of popular resistance to an alien order. The annexation dispossessed the Taluqdars of the region. Before this, Taluqdars maintained armed retainers, built forts, and enjoyed a degree of autonomy. 7. Britishers, unwilling to tolerate the power of the Taluqdars, disarmed and destroyed their forts after annexation. Britishers introduced the land revenue policy of summary settlement in 1856. This resulted in reduction of land under Taluqdars from 67% to 38%. British land revenue officers believed that by replacing Taluqdars with actual owners of the soil would reduce exploitation of peasants. However, this didn't happen as revenue flows for the state increased, but the burden of demand on the peasants did not decline. Over-assessment of revenue demand by officials. Dispossession of Taluqdars, breakdown of whole social order. Peasants were now directly exposed to the harsh revenue policies of the British and could no longer avail loans in times of hardship or crop failure. Resistance during 1857 in Awadh was carried out by Taluqdars and their peasants. Many Taluqdars joined Begum Hazrat Mahal, the wife of the Nawab, to fight against Britishers. Grievances of the peasants were carried by sepoys due to the majority of sepoys belonging to Awadh. Awadh was called the nursery of the Bengal army. Relationship of the sepoys with their superior white officers was changing. In the 1820s both maintained cordial relations. Post-1840s, officers developed a sense of superiority and discriminated against sepoys racially. Abuse and physical violence became common. The close links existed between the sepoys and the rural world of North India. Large number of sepoys of Bengal army belonged to the villages of Awadh and eastern Uttar Pradesh. Changes and the threats perceived among sepoys and their family were quickly transmitted to the sepoy lines and further to villages. When the sepoys took up arms, they were joined by the peasants. Socio-religious causes. The attempts at socio-religious reform were seen by a large section of the population as interference in the social and religious domains of Indian society by outsiders. The introduction of the English education in preference to the Indian education, the abolition of sati, the change in the Hindu law of inheritance, the abolition of female infanticide and the permission of widow remarriage perturbed the orthodox mind, who now became alarmed. They began to fear that the Indian religion and purity would be polluted by the civilization of the Amlekas. Railways had been introduced in the country by Lord Dalhousie. The people of different religions and castes had to sit in the same compartments and on the same seats. This was quite intolerable for the orthodox Hindus, who considered it a serious inroad upon the pious religion. It has been a wide practice with the conquerors to degrade the conquered, disrupt their social setup, condemn their religion and impoverish them with a view to attracting them to their own religion, thoughts and practices. 8. The English authorities encouraged their clergy to come to India as missionaries and to effect a large-scale conversion of the Indian people to Christianity. Even in the military, the bribes, promotions and rewards were used to convert the sepoys to Christianity. In fact, the English attempts at conversion were as systematic as the policy of territorial aggression, though this work had been entrusted to private missionaries mostly. The Hindu law of inheritance that stood in the way of conversion was modified, and all the people of India felt that their religion was in danger. For e.g., Religious Disability Act, 1856, modified Hindu customs, declaring that by changing religion a person is not debarred from inheriting ancestral property. The result was great discontent and resentment. Dalhousie's refusal to grant adoptions to the rulers of the states who died without any natural male heir added fuel to the fire. A son, whether natural or adopted, is a religious necessity for a Hindu. The Hindu Shastras define no difference between a natural and an adopted son. Dalhousie's doctrine of lapse was, thus, taken as a serious inroad upon the Hindu religion by the Indian princes and the people. Besides, the confiscation of religious grants and the naked condemnation of the Hindu and Muslim religions by the English missionaries were greatly resented by the Indian masses. Influence of events outside India. There were certain events which coincided with the 1857 revolt, in which British suffered serious losses, like First Afghan War, 1838–42, Punjab Wars, 1845–49, Crimean Wars, 1854–56, Santhal Rebellion, 1855–57. They had psychological repercussions. It was felt that the British could be defeated. Discontent among sepoys. The causes mentioned above were quite favorable for the revolt, yet nothing worthwhile could have been achieved until and unless the Indian sepoys had joined it. Fortunately, or unfortunately, the army became dissatisfied and the situation became really dangerous for the English. The British forces had suffered serious reverses in the First Afghan War, which broke the spell of British invincibility. The low salaries of the sepoys and the bad treatment that they were meted out enraged them. They began to feel dissatisfied. The certain regulations introduced by Lord Canning intensified the feelings of resentment among the Indian sepoys. Post Office Act 1854, he made them pay regular postage for all their letters which were free previously. The sepoys declared unfit for foreign service were not given pensions. Thus, the loyalty of the Indian sepoys began to disappear. Besides the glaring disproportion between the numbers of British and native soldiers in India, the troops were not properly distributed. Almost all the strategic points were in the hands of the native sepoys. Between Allahabad and Calcutta there was only one British regiment at Dinapore, while places like Delhi and Allahabad were in the hands of Indian sepoys. This favorable situation encouraged the Indian sepoys very much and individual revolts began to spring up. 9. The army was invariably headed and commanded by English men, but the real strength of the company's forces lay in the Indian regiments. Upon this, the General Services Enlistment Act 1856 of Lord Canning fanned the flame as it required all the new recruits to serve anywhere in India and abroad. Immediate cause. Lastly, the introduction of the Enfield rifle served as a spark to open the mutiny. The cartridges which were used in these rifles were greased with pig's fat. This was highly objectionable to the Hindus and the Muslims alike. Moreover, the soldiers had to bite them with their teeth before loading the guns. So long as the Indian soldiers did not know about this fact, they used these cartridges. Encouraged by this, English set up factories in India to manufacture these cartridges. The sepoys of Dum Dum, a cantonment near Barakpur, where a factory of cartridges was set up, came to know of the fact and a current of indignation ran through the rank and file of the army. The Hindus and the Muslims considered it a deliberated inroad upon their religions. The country had already reached the ignition point and the greased cartridges precipitated the crisis. Berhampur, West Bengal, the 2nd of February 1857, 19th Bengal Infantry soldiers refused the new Enfield rifles. Barakpur, Mangal Pandey, the 29th of March 1857, went a step ahead and fired upon the sergeant major of his unit. He was arrested and executed and his regiment disbanded. The revolt starts. The revolt began in Meerut on the 10th of May 1857. It soon spread to Punjab, Narmada region, Bihar and Rajputana. 90 men of the 3rd Native Cavalry refused to use greased cartridges. 85 of these soldiers were disbanded and imprisoned for 10 years. This sparked a mutiny among soldiers in Meerut who released the imprisoned soldiers, killed their officers, unfurled the banner of revolt and set for Delhi. In Delhi, local infantry of Delhi joined the infantry coming from Meerut. Killed European officers including the political agent Simon Fraser, and seized the city. Bahadur Shah Zafar was proclaimed as the Emperor of India. By recognizing Bahadur Shah as emperor, the sepoys transformed a soldiers' mutiny into an all-India revolt. It led to rulers and chiefs, Rani Lakshmi Bai, Nana Sahib, from different parts of India taking part in the revolt by proclaiming their loyalty to Bahadur Shah. What the rebels wanted. The vision of unity. The rebel proclamations in 1857 appealed to people to join the rebels. The rebellion was seen as a war in which both Hindus and Muslims had equally to lose or gain. Ishtihars issued reflect back pre-British Hindu-Muslim past and coexistence of different communities earlier. 10. In Bareilly in western Uttar Pradesh, in December 1857, the British spent 50,000 rupees to incite the Hindu population against the Muslims but failed. Azamgarh Proclamation, 25 August 1857. Azamgarh Proclamation of August 25, 1857, was issued in the name of the Hindu-Muslim divide. The proclamation had denouncements of the tyranny and oppression of the English people. Besides, it also had a form of manifesto which sought to win the support of the influential quarters. It had various promises, including zamindari rights, attractive pay for soldiers, and, gratis, or the use of government vessels of the tradesmen in India. While the proclamation also talked about Hindu Muslims, it called for their unity against the Christian missionaries who had arrived in India to convert the people from their religion. This proclamation was published in the Delhi Gazette in the midst of the Great Mutiny of 1857. The author was most probably Faiz Shah, a grandson of the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar. The proclamation, which was issued under the name of Bahadur Shah, who made a heartfelt request to the people to come together and fight under the acceptance of both Mahavir and Muhammad. It was commendable that there was hardly any noticeable incident of religious divisions between the community of Hindus and Muslim during the uprising, despite attempts were carried out by the British to create one. The British spent 50,000 rupees in Bareilly, western Uttar Pradesh, to instigate the Hindu community against the Muslims but failed. Everyone's cause to participate in the war may be different, but everyone found the common enemy in the Britishers. Civilian participation. The sepoys were encouraged by the large participation of civilians, particularly in the northwestern region and Awadh. Participants included people from all sections majorly, peasants, artisans, shopkeepers, laborers, zamindars, priests and civil servants. Peasants attacked zamindars and moneylenders, destroying all records. Every sign of British rule like the police station, courts, revenue office were attacked. Leaders in different parts of India. Delhi. Bahadur Shah was the symbolic head. Real command lied with the court of soldiers led by General Bakht Khan. The court had 10 members, 6 from the army and 4 from the civilian department. The court conducted affairs of the state in the name of Bahadur Shah. Kanpur. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of last Peshwa Baji Rao II, led the revolt here. He expelled the British from Kanpur. Commander Sir Hugh Wheeler surrendered but was killed. Nana Sahib recognized Bahadur as emperor and proclaimed himself the governor. Lucknow. Leader was Begum Hazrat Mahal. Her son Burgess Qadir was proclaimed as Nawab and a regular administration was organized with offices shared equally between Hindus and Muslims. British resident Sir Henry Lawrence was killed. 11. Bareilly. Leader was Khan Bahadur, a descendant of the former ruler of Rohilkhand. Bihar. Leader here was Kunwar Singh, a zamindar of Jagdishpur. He was deprived of his estate by the East India Company. Faizabad. Leader here was Maulvi Ahmadullah, a native of Madras. Jhansi. Led by Rani Laxmibai, the most outstanding leader of the revolt. Lord Dalhousie had refused to allow her adopted son to take the throne following the doctrine of lapse. She gave the battle cry, Main Apni Jhansi Nahi Dungi. Tansha Tope, a close associate of Nana Sahib, joined her after the loss of Kanpur. Sacrifices. Sacrifices were made by the common people and it was also immense. Shamal, a local villager in Pargana Bharat, UP, organized peasants from 84 villages to rise against the Britishers. Attacked government building, sent supplies to sepoys in Delhi and cut all communication link between British headquarters and Meerut. He set up headquarters in the bungalow of the irrigation department, which turned into a hall of justice, resolving disputes and passing judgments. Lines of communication. Reason for the similarity in the pattern of the revolt. The planning and coordination between different places. First, 7th Awadh irregular cavalry refused to accept the new cartridges. Sepoys or their emissaries moved from one station to another, planning about the rebellion. Panchayats occurred at Kanpur sepoy lines every night. During movement from one place to other, sepoys motivated and encouraged others to join the rebellion. As in case of Captain Hersey of Awadh, the 41st Native Infantry stationed at the same place persuaded Indian subordinates of Hersey to either kill him or deliver him to prison. Sepoys lived in lines and shared a common lifestyle. Despite being of different castes and culture, they decided and discussed their future together. The sepoys were the makers of their own rebellion. Leadership was not only hailed to members of royal family, ordinary men and women and religious leaders were also given leadership at some places. Meerut. A fakir was considered leader of the rebel. Lucknow. Many religious leaders and self-styled prophets gave direction to the destruction of British rule. Bharat. UP Shamal mobilized the villages of Pargana. Singhvam, Chotanagpur, Gonu, a tribal cultivator, became a rebel leader of the Kol tribals of the region. 12. Two rebels of 1857. Shah Mal, Jat cultivator of Pargana Bharat in Uttar Pradesh, whose kinship ties extended over Chaurasi Des, 84 villages. Villagers found land revenue system under Britishers as oppressive. High revenue demand. Its collection was inflexible. Shah Mal mobilized the headmen and cultivators. He moved from village to village, collecting people to fight against injustice and oppression, and he plundered the houses of moneylenders and traders. Shah Mal displaced proprietors took back their lost land and he attacked government buildings. He sent supplies to the sepoys at Delhi. He stopped official communication between British headquarters and Meerut. Raja Shah Mal turned an English officer's bungalow into a hall of justice. He set up an effective network of intelligence. However, he was killed in battle in July 1857. Maulvi Ahmadullah Shah. He played an important part in the revolt of 1857. He was educated in Hyderabad and moved village to village preaching jihad, religious war. He was popularly called Danka Shah, the Maulvi with the drum, Danka. Many people started following him, which threatened Britishers. In 1856, after reaching Lucknow, he was stopped from preaching and jailed in Faizabad in 1857. He was elected leader by 22nd Native Infantry after release. He fought the Battle of Chinhat, defeating British forces under Henry Lawrence. Many believed he was invincible, and could not be killed by the British. The suppression begins. The British captured Delhi in September 1857, i.e., 4 months after the revolt began. Bahadur Shah Zafar was taken prisoner and exiled to Rangoon, and thus Mughals were finally extinguished. With the fall of Delhi, the focal point of revolt disappeared. Kanpur was captured by Sir Colin Campbell. Nana Sahib escaped to Nepal. Jhansi was captured by Sir Hugh Rose. Laxmibai died on the battlefield. By the end of 1859, British authority was fully established. Repression. The British passed a series of laws to help them quell the insurgency caused by rebels. The entire North India was put under martial law. The military officers and even ordinary Britons were given the power to try and punish Indians suspected of rebellion. 13. The Britishers tried to suppress rebels by enacting new special laws and their reinforcements. The British forces attacked from two sides, one from Calcutta and another from Punjab, to reconquer Delhi. The attempts were started in June 1857, but the city was captured by late September as rebels from all over North India joined to defend the capital. In Gangetic Plains, the British reconquered the area by capturing village by village. The Britishers realized that they were dealing with a huge uprising at the start of the counter-insurgency. According to Forsyth, a British official, 3/4 of adult male participated in the rebellion from Awadh. The Britishers used military power, broke unity among Indians by shaking hands with landlords. Rebel landlords were dispossessed and loyal were rewarded. Many landlords died out of starvation and illness. Failure of the mutiny. The Indian Mutiny, though a great effort, could not succeed. The fall of Delhi and the arrest of Emperor Bahadur Shah marked the beginning of the suppression of the mutiny. Lack of arms and ammunitions. The mutineers were very weak in equipment. Though the mutineers were mostly soldiers, yet they could not expect any fresh supply of arms. The English had adequate equipment as they had several ordnance factories working for themselves. Besides, they could get arms and other equipment from England also. The mutineers lacked discipline while the English forces were perfectly disciplined. This lack of discipline and equipment was a dominant cause of the failure of the mutiny. Absence of leadership. The mutineers, though they were burning with fervor against the British, had no good generals to command themselves. The mutineers were generally sepoys. The leaders of the revolt like Rani Lakshmibai, Nana Sahib were brave but lacked the military genius that makes good generals. On the other hand, the English had competent generals like Campbell, Nicholson and Outram. The mutineers needed Baburs and Shivajis to command them, but unfortunately, they had none. Emperor Bahadur Shah was too old to take the field. Though Bakht Khan and Tatya Tope were good generals, yet they were commoners and the princes, aristocrats refused to obey them. The British were able to control an efficient and widespread system of telegraphs and postal communication. Absence of common ideal. The common ideal of the restoration of Bahadur Shah to the throne of his ancestors had inspired the mutineers in the beginning, but with the fall of Delhi and capture of the emperor, this ideal disappeared. This absence of the common ideal dealt a death blow to the mutiny. Now the only ideal before the mutineers was the destruction of the East India Company. This ideal was of a negative nature and could not affect the unity which the presence of the emperor had done. 14. The English now were able to sow the seeds of division among the mutineers by inciting the Hindus and the Muslims against each other. So, the mutiny assumed the shape of individual efforts and exploits and hence its failure. Mutual differences among leaders. Though all the forces of revolt were following the same policy, yet they had their mutual dissensions which did not let them combine in action. The numerous units of the mutineers remained as separate armies and could not fight as one collective whole. The English siege of Delhi which continued so long stands evidence to this fact. Had the mutineers been able to sink their mutual differences and combine in their action, the history would have been altogether different. Personal jealousies and individual leadership stood in the way of concerted action and hence the suppression of the revolt. Lack of unity and absence of all India participation. It is a pity that the force with which the English suppressed the revolt came from India. The southern part of the country, Punjab, the Sikh states, Rajputana and several Zamindars and chiefs never sided with the mutineers. Some of them remained as silent spectators while others supported the English. It is really a pity that Indians, despite having paid heavily for their traitor, never learnt a lesson. Limited resources. The resources of the mutineers were very limited as compared to those of the company. The resources in men and money of southern India, Nepal, the Punjab etc. were at the disposal of the company while the mutineers had no rich territories to draw their resources from. The English had, by now, been free from the Crimean crisis and were able to concentrate their resources in India. The Cis-Sutlej Sikh states added to the British forces and supplied them with other equipment. Thus, the lack of resources for the mutineers was an outstanding cause of the failure of the mutiny. No unified ideology. Those who led the revolt lacked a clear understanding of colonial rule. They went to Bahadur Shah to re-establish the rule of Mughals. This shows that they lacked a forward-looking program. They represented diverse elements, with differing grievances and concepts of current politics. The idea of modern nationalism was unknown to the leaders.